you're like me, you spend lots of time poring over maps, looking at weather data, all in an effort to help predict when and where my best times to hunt will be. It'd be nice if there was a reliable source with all this information in one place. Enter the Spartan Forge app. Unlike some other predictive apps on the market, Spartan Forge was created from military combat intelligence experience tailored for hunters, and stands at the nexus of machine learning and white-tailed deer hunting. No more man-made algorithms. This is a predictive model based on real GPS collared deer data, historical and predictive weather, and the next level of mapping imagery, all at my fingertips. I've been using the iOS app this season, and it has replaced all my other mapping tools. Visit SpartanForge.ai and sign up today, or head to your iOS or Android app store. Use the promo code TRUTH to save some money and download it today. Mobile hunters, if you're interested in upping your mobile game, then head to tetherednation.com and check out their saddle gear. There are a few things you can actually buy that will help you become a better deer hunter or give you the freedom to hunt any tree or any situation. This is the reason why I started saddle hunting in the first place and why I use Tethered's gear. I can honestly say that Tethered's saddle gear has changed how I hunt for the better. Big tree, little tree, from the ground, it doesn't matter. I'm untethered by my gear to hunt the best setup for the situation, instead of hunting for a tree that my gear can use. My current core setup consists of the Phantom saddle, tethered one sticks, and the Predator platform, along with an assortment of their accessories. So if you want to up your mobile game, head over to tetherednation.com. Welcome to the Truth from a Stand Deer Hunting Podcast, brought to you by Spartan Forge. I'm your host, Clint Campbell, and you're listening to episode number 303. Today I'm joined by Michael Varady, and we are talking about killing hammer bucks on small parcels and how switching to a trad bow has changed his game. So stay tuned. All right. What is up, everyone? Happy Wednesday to you. Hope you're doing well. Hope you are feeling fine. It is here. It is upon us for those Pennsylvania brothers and sisters that haven't kicked off their season yet. You will be doing so. This comes out on Wednesday, so I believe Saturday you are able to you'll be able to rock and roll. I know Michigan just opened. I want to say this past weekend. I think Ohio did too officially. So by and large, everything should be in, and, deer season is now kind of in full swing. I've had, 2 weeks at this point, for me, being able to get out. So I've been able to do, I guess, 2 days of hunting, really kind of 3 hunts, if you will. The opening weekend, I went out for an evening hunt. We already talked about that. And then this past week, temperatures got a little bit warm, but then we had a nice little front kind of come in, toward the end of the week. And, Friday was looking really good, just in order to kind of get out. The temps, I don't even remember how big the drop was. I think the high on Friday was maybe 62 or something like that. And I think the day before it was maybe in the 70s, like 75. So pretty good drop. But the morning temps were going to be right around, like, I want to say like 46 to 49 degrees. So I actually got up before work. There was an area that I wanted to check. The wind was perfect for. I had a camera in that general area, so I was like, well, I can go in and hunt that. I got the perfect wind to kind of get in there and hunt it, not booger it up, check that camera, and then set up somewhere in there where I know kind of deer had been kind of funneling down through this particular area. And I needed to check the camera anyway, and so it was one of those kind of let's take advantage of the good weather and let's do a hunt here where we're not kind of boogering up anything that we want to kind of save for later in the year. And who knows, maybe we get lucky. This is an area where I've found some good deer in the past, specifically last year, and kind of put the puzzle pieces together a little bit and figured out kind of what I think to be their kind of route of travel from where I have found them and where I have seen them in the past, and where they're kind of not disappearing to, but where are they kind of, meandering about, and how are they getting from one area to another. And so kind of started pinpointing that. And this is kind of that travel route, if you will. So was playing that kind of setup where I thought if there's something good in the area, he may kind of slip through this particular spot. Because as of right now, after that card pool, there was nothing worth note on that particular camera that I'm aware of. And so ended up working during the day Friday, I work from home, of course, so did that, and then was able to bust out right after I was finished wrapping up some stuff at work, and go out and do an evening hunt as well. And the area I was hunting, particularly, I was kind of at the part that I was kind of going through. I was going to go buy 2 camera kind of locations in general, and so I was able to kind of check both of those. Had good wins for both of those, and then the one area I wanted to hunt because the thing that I'm really kind of struggling with right now is, a lot of my scouting this past off season, it was in areas to kind of expand some of the good areas I'm kind of aware of. And I really focused in on this year. I pay attention to it every year, but this year I made even a more concerted effort to not just pay attention to, but document like anywhere I was seeing a white oak, and dropping a pin in my Spartan 4 app and saying, hey, there's food here. And the plan then was to go back, throughout this off season, throughout this summer, and note, what's holding acorns and what's not. And just, summer got busy. I wasn't able to kind of make my way through. So, a lot of times I'll just kind of plan that since my season comes in kind of 2 weeks earlier than the rest of the state. And I don't often have something on a good bed to food pattern because I don't have a lot of ag around me and stuff like that. So those first 2 weeks are really just a lot of me scouting, checking cameras, setting up and doing some hunts and trying to, just be at the right place at the right time, potentially if I know of a good deer in a general area without harming anything that I intend to use when I know the getting's going to get good, if you will. And the bummer of it is this last place I went into, I mean, there were just so many acorns in there whenever I found it this off season. It's not far from an area that I've hunted before. And just the general movement of the deer suggested to me that they were spending time, a little bit to my east. And so that's why I ended up scouting this particular area. And I had assumed there was probably some sort of food in there just based on the time of year that I was seeing deer at this other location and the times of days that I was seeing them. And so when I scouted, of course, I found, a handful of white oaks in this area that had all apparently dropped last year because there was just, stuff, there were just caps and stuff all over the floor of the timber in that particular spot. And so I wanted to get in there this past week when that front blew through, perfect wind for it, go in there. And I was like, if there's going to be anywhere it's going to be dropping, it's going to be there. And I could potentially, make a play on if there's a good deer in the area, because I haven't had any good trail camera pictures in that general area, that would be a spot that they would be coming to feed. And so that was kind of my game plan. And so I rolled in there, and that was kind of my last hope, like ace in the hole of if nothing else is dropping, which I haven't seen anything else, at least in the spots I've been looking so far. Nothing has dropped, and that held true in this spot as well. There's not a single freaking acorn on the ground, and there was a ton of wind on Thursday and Friday. So anything that was in trees should have been hitting the ground at that point. And so right now I'm kind of at the, back to the drawing board, so to speak. In the North Piece, I got a couple really good bucks to chase. So that's might be where I spend a lot of my time, but locally, kind of on the struggle bus. And it looks like a lot of my hunts are going to be just scouting in general and going out and walking and trying to find, the next best food sources and stuff like that. And so that's really my plan, at least for the early part of the season here, until we start heading toward, things getting more frisky as we get later into October. But with that, we're going to go ahead and jump into today's show. 2 things real quick. Skull Brew Coffee. Make sure you're picking up your pour over packs for your travel hunts this fall. Skullbrew.com or skullbrewcoffee.com. So check that out. And then head to the merch tab on the truthandstand.com website. Pick up some swag for this season. So cool show for you guys today. Have my buddy Michael Varady on. Michael is from New Jersey. He's a fellow East Coaster, and just laying down hammer bucks. When you think about where he's hunting predominantly, like in small lots, small parcels, in and around suburbia type of settings, to a degree. And so, I'm very familiar with that just based on where I live, and just the caliber of deer that he's killing consistently is pretty crazy. He's been doing this for years, so this isn't like a new thing. But what really kind of caught my attention whenever I kind of learned of Michael was he switched to traditional equipment. I think it was 2 years ago, if I'm not mistaken. Michael and I recorded this several weeks ago, and just now getting to it to get it out. And in that time frame, I want to say he's killed maybe like 4 hammer bucks in 2 years, because I think he can take 2 a year, something like that. Don't quote me on that. We talk about it a little bit in the podcast. But the moral of the story is basically since he picked up a trad bow, he's been absolutely lethal. And he had killed plenty of good deer prior to that, but we talk a little bit about it. He struggled with some anticipation of the shot, or what some people refer to as like target panic and things like that. And just, making poor shots more often than he would like to. And changing to traditional equipment for him has just kind of changed his game. He's way more confident with that, even though you would think that it would be harder. He just seems to be absolutely deadly with that. And as I'm putting this out, I know last week he killed another doe, so the dude is just slaying it with the trad bow. But really enjoyed this conversation. He's a killer. Doing it in New Jersey, a lot of small parcels. Had a lot of fun kind of chatting with Michael, and hope you guys dig the podcast as much as I did chatting with him and making it. So with that, we're going to go ahead and jump into today's show. And as always, thank you all for listening. All right, folks, welcome back to another episode of the Truth from the Stand Deer Hunting Podcast. And today I've got a fellow East Coaster on. When you and I talked earlier this week, just to kind of, or I guess it was last week, I said it was kind of funny that you reminded me of my buddy Greg Litzinger, not just because you guys are both from New Jersey, but you're both tatted up. And I was like, it's almost like you guys could be brothers.
Yeah.
Which is kind of funny. But I got on Mr. Michael Varady from New Jersey. How's it going, brother?
All right, man. How are you?
I'm doing good. How'd you shoot, man? I know you're just wrapping up at the 3D course. How'd you sling them?
A couple lefts, couple rights.
Yeah.
No, I shot all right. I actually this summer, man, my work schedule, I've been working nights, and I haven't been shooting as much as I should have all summer. And I was fishing, like my gear switched to fishing in the summer.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been kind of slacking the shooting department. So
nice.
now I just got back from ETAR in Pennsylvania, which is a big traditional archery 3D shoot, and kind of got the juices flowing again. And now I'm getting out there every week.
Nice, man.
Slinging some arrows, trying to get ready. So
nice. I find it's I don't know. I guess I'll just ask you the question. Do you find that when you're like when you pivot to like fishing during the summer, like another passion or hobby or whatever, do you feel like it helps you whenever it comes like around the hunting season? Because I used to kind of just be all consumed with bow hunting, which I still am, but a newfound love of like for me at least, jiu-jitsu has kind of taken some of the focus off of bow hunting, where it's like when I'm in it, I'm like super in it, but I don't necessarily obsess over it to like a sickening point, to a degree where I kind of outthink myself. So maybe might be a good way to say it.
Yeah, fishing basically just takes up time for me. You know what I mean? I'm not one of those guys. I know we've touched on it briefly when we talked before, but like in the summer, early season, I'm kind of like a less is more guy. Like I don't want to be in the woods tromping around.
Mm-hmm.
I want to let the deer do what they're going to do all summer, and then kind of hit them with a sneak attack when the season opens,
Right.
Like I don't have any cameras out yet. There's a couple spots I slow roll and I glass and I see if I can see anything moving. Unfortunately, by me, it's like neighborhoods. You might catch one on someone's front yard, or in a field somewhere. But basically everything's visual now, and so I don't, I kind of forget about hunting in the summer, which is hard to do sometimes.
It's hard to do, but I think it can be healthy. You know what I mean? Just like that mental break from it, because I'm guessing your season probably starts kind of early, just knowing a little bit about Jersey and have like how certain seasons kind of open different times. And I'm in the same boat where my hunting season opens middle of September. And so if I go from middle of September, and because I'm in a special regs unit, my season doesn't close till like the very end of January. I mean, you're talking like basically September through January is my hunting season.
Yeah, dude. We go to second week in September typically to mid-February. So I'm so burnt out by February that I need that break, man. Like I just like when I was younger, I would end the season and I'd be like, I can't wait to open a day, and I'd be counting down the days. And now I don't know if I'm getting a little older or what's going on, but now I'm like, hunting season's a month away, and I kind of wish it was 2 or 3 months away. Like, because I know once I slip into that zone, it's go. Like I'm doing, I'm just going full bore,
Yeah, and I think too, like as you get older, and this is for me at least. I don't want to speak for you, but like I actually started having an even like I guess more appreciation for the postseason and the value that it brings, not just in terms of like scouting and stuff like that. But that's one of my favorite times to go out, because I take my dog out, we go shed hunting together, and I just spend a lot of time in the woods, not with a bow in my hand. And I feel like sometimes when you got that bow in your hand, it changes, it changes the,
It's
I don't want to say
it's
you're,
stressful.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
It stresses me out. There's no hands down. Like I'm stressed out all season.
yeah. And it's
You
like,
know?
it's nice to just kind of go into the woods and sometimes just to be able to kind of enjoy it with my dog and just like, yeah,
Yeah.
I'm scouting. I'm trying to get some stuff done and figure some stuff out, but
Yeah.
it's not a, I don't want to say life or death. That's not the right way to put it, but it's not an intense situation. I guess I should say
Yeah.
it's a very, if I find great sign today and some stuff that can help me in the season, awesome. If I don't, well, whatever. I just spent the
Yeah.
last like 8 hours in the woods with my dog. It's like
Yeah.
not a bad day. You know what I mean?
And during the season, you kind of have these sits. You have these stressful sits where like you have a buck that's consistent in the area, and you're going in and you're like overthinking everything, trying to pick a tree, and that to me that's like I have a good chance of seeing this buck tonight. That's like a like a kind of, I don't want to say a stressful situation because it's not. It's what I love to do, but it's like high tension. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're anticipating this deer to come through. So I almost like during the season I like to break it up and have a sit where, you know what, I'm just gonna go out today with a stand on my back and get downwind of some doe bedding, and you know if I see a deer, that's a plus. Like I almost look forward to those types of sits
Hmm.
more than those sits of like, okay, today's the day, everything, all my dots lined up, let's go. Like,
Right. How often do you
okay,
think you're doing that during the season? Like, how often do you think are your sits targeted versus, I'm just gonna go kind of pick this spot. Maybe it's a spot
yeah.
you have a little bit of intel on, but not a ton, and you're like, I don't have a good win today for anywhere else, so I'm just gonna go kind of throw a
Yeah.
flyer at this spot.
So the way I mean, being like a working guy, and I can't go into the woods any, as much as I would like. So basically, my weeks consist of I've yet to get into the cell camera game.
Hmm.
I just don't need it yet. I don't need to be at work getting pictures of the buck. Like, you know, he passes the camera in the morning, and I got to go to work. Like, I would be calling out hands down, being in the woods in the evening.
Right.
But so my weeks basically consist of like I'm off Tuesday, Wednesday. That's my weekend.
Hmm.
So my my weeks basically I would check cameras on like a Sunday or a Monday after work,
Hmm.
and then I would assess like what I have going on in those spots that I checked. I'd be like, okay, I got pictures of this buck. He's nighttime. I might go and sit somewhere off the camera, closer to where I think he's bedding, if I can. If I have permission to access where I think he's coming from. If not, then I go, all right, I got nothing going on this week, and I'll head out to public or do something. I'm not. There's definitely not a day off that I'm gonna have that I'm not in the woods.
Right. Right. And so
Um,
it sounds like you're really kind of looking for like areas that you kind of have a good feeling for. It's a targeted approach, right?
yeah,
And you're kind
yeah,
of looking for the intel to tell you when it's
yeah.
time to make a move.
A lot of greenbrier thickets.
Yeah.
I target those greenbrier thickets, and sometimes they're between houses, sometimes they're between fields. It seems to be where a lot of deer bed near in my area.
Right. Let's talk about that for a second, man, because I think people there's it's funny because until I kind of met Greg and started spending more time hanging out with him and stuff like that, I always had kind of an image of what hunting New Jersey would look like or what the kind of landscape would look like, and it's actually way more diverse than I had kind of thought originally.
Yeah,
And so, what types of areas are you hunting? I mean, it sounds like you're hunting a lot of kind of suburban type of areas, small parcels. Is that correct, or am I completely
yeah,
wrong?
a little bit of both. You know what I mean? I got like some bigger hardwoods that I hit, swamp edges, and then a lot of tight in between houses stuff. If you could, I drive a tow truck for a living, and if I can tow someone's car and drop them off, and they got, I'll pull up Onyx, and if they look like they got the property, I'm gonna probably drop the bomb on them and ask them. But and most of the time it's a no. You know,
Right.
some people have no idea that bow hunting's even legal in New Jersey.
That's crazy.
Um, I get that a lot. Is that legal? Like, and I'm like, no. Like, then I got to pull stuff up and like prove to them that it's
But
it's a
right,
thing.
it's the thing. People do this.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's funny, man. Like I had a buddy, I think Long Island. He is I want to say he's a UPS driver, and he
Hmm.
gets so much access to killer little parcels. He'll just be driving and see like a hammer buck and deliver. And like, and the funny thing is like he's been on this route. I think at this point now, I think he's going on like 20 years that he's had like the same route. It's at least in the teens. So he knows these people. He's been delivering their packages to them for like, a decade plus. And so they kind of, it's like me. It's like as much stuff as we get from Amazon, it's like I kind of know the UPS guy. You know what I mean? Like he's here like every other day. And and so you kind of get to know him. So he's able to use that to his advantage where he's like, they're like, oh, he's like, hey, Mrs. Johnson, how you doing? Hey, I saw a really big buck over here and he ran back behind your house here. I was wondering if I'd maybe be able to hunt back there. Yeah. And they're like, oh yeah, you go ahead. You know what I mean? It's like they're, family.
That's huge. Like, because with me, I'm towing somebody's car one time, you know what I mean? So then they look at me, I got tattoos all over, they're like, what, you want to do what? Like, usually it's, get the hell out of here, but.
Right. I was going to ask you how that works out. Like, because it might be, but it's like if you're towing on repo, I'm going to say it's a solid no.
No. No, I do AAA. So normally I'm helping, I am helping them. They are thankful that I'm there to help. But like, I have one Polish dude, he gave me permission 8 years ago and it still stands to this day,
Oh.
But I didn't lose it, but I kind of did because I was going to, so in New Jersey, we have to shoot a doe before, if you want to hunt September, you have to shoot a doe before you can shoot a buck. It's called Erna buck or whatever. And so I usually go sit in his, he has like 3 acres or something. And I usually go sit in the corner of his property for opening day. And the one year I go and I hung a stand the night before or maybe 2 days before. And I get in the stand in the dark and I'm like, the deer usually move through there and it's getting light out. And I'm getting like, now it's like gray light. And I'm like, are those sticks? They look like climbing sticks, like 2 trees over from me. And sure enough, it gets light out and there's a stand hung 2 trees away. And then I look down like at the base of my tree. I didn't even see it. There's a note in a sandwich baggie. And the guy's like, I hope you didn't mind. I put my stand, 2 trees over or whatnot. And he's like, I put 50 pounds of corn out. Feel free to hunt whenever you want, but text me and let me know so we don't go on the same day. Like, I deal with a lot of that stuff, and it winded up being a guy that his wife works with,
right?
And that's gonna happen. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And to some people, hunting's like that. Some people's like, hey, I'm gonna, put a stand here. You're welcome to sit at any time. Like hunting's just,
Yeah, for
if you take it serious, it's not like that,
Yeah, it's funny. I was talking to a fella. I forget who it was. But just talking about, I travel a lot to hunt, and I think they were just kind of suggesting like, hey, if we're in the same area, let's like hook up or whatever, and which is great. Like I'm all for meeting new people. That's one thing I love about doing this podcast. I've had the opportunity to meet just some awesome people and make great friends. But, I kind of had to mention like, hey, I appreciate that, but, a lot of times when I'm on these travel hunts or when I'm hunting in general, it's kind of a lone wolf mission. You know what I mean? Like I'm not super fun to be around. I'm not a campy guy. I guess I would say, it's like I go, I hunt all day. I come home, I eat, and I'm in bed as early and as quickly as I can get in bed after I get all my stuff ready for the next morning. That way I'm able to get up the next morning and go do what I got to go do, and not be all groggy and stuff. So I'm kind of a buzzkill at camp. So if a travel hunting camp for you is like, let's party and have drinks, I'm probably not your guy.
Same. I don't get me wrong. If you shoot a good one, I will stay up all night with you.
Yeah, we're gonna have a good time.
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
Yeah,
but
that's sometimes I think I'm like, honestly, I think that's why I hunt. Like, there's nothing that I enjoy more. It's like one of my friends killed a good buck and everybody gets to hang out in the garage. You know what I mean? Like that. I love that, man.
Yeah, it's funny. Like I say that, but like my buddy Chad and I were in Kansas this year, and he just killed like a hammer, like 170, a little over 170-inch deer in Kansas. And I was all stoked, and we went and pulled it out together, and it was just like a nightmare getting this deer out. It almost killed us. The thing was huge, just like big body, heavy. And we were like, whenever he killed it, I was like, yeah, we're partying tonight. Like I brought like a bottle of bourbon along for us to like celebrate when one of us killed, like, anticipating one of us would kill something on the trip. And when we finally got back to the place, like We were so tired. Like we had like one small sip of whiskey and both literally passed out with the lights on, like in my little travel trailer,
Oh, damn.
and just like went
Yeah,
to
yeah.
bed. It was so
Yeah, it's different.
anticlimactic.
It's totally different when you're on a trip. But when you're home, like when you're home, it's another ball, another story.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Probably.
Man, so I know you. I mean, let me ask you this: how did you get started hunting? Right? Because I think some people, because it sounds like you live in somewhat of like a suburban kind of area. Is that where you grew? Did you grow up in like a suburban area and was hunting kind of
Yeah.
part of your family,
So
or was it something you got into later?
yep, I grew up in suburbs basically, but I always had woods around. You know what I mean? I had
Right.
a sand pit where I'd ride my dirt bike when I was a kid, or and lakes. I was always fishing, so like we did have woods around. But I basically grew up primarily just shotgun hunting
Hmm.
for buck a week, which is 1 week out of the year,
Hmm.
and and small game hunting. That is all I did when I was
Right.
a kid. I was obsessed with rabbits and pheasants, man. That was
Hmm.
it. But I think I actually learned a lot about deer just being in the woods, small game hunting. You know,
Hmm.
so and then
So was it did your
um
dad hunt? Is that how you kind of got into it, or?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. My dad hunted, my uncle hunted.
Okay.
Um,
Nice. What do
but
you?
I got bit by the small game bug, as a youngin, and I always said I didn't want to bow hunt because I always said to my dad, my luck, he'll be 40 yards out and I won't be able to shoot him. You know what I mean? That was
Right.
always my biggest fear, that having a monster come by. And so I didn't start bow hunting until my um probably, I don't know, 21 or something, 22.
Okay. So
That's when I got serious, I should say.
right, right. What do you think it was? It's funny that you mentioned the small game stuff because I mean, small game often a lot of folks start out like I started out, a lot of squirrel hunting, a lot of pheasant hunting, a lot of rabbit hunting, stuff like that. I mean, still,
Hmm.
I gun hunted with my old man growing up. I grew up in rural PA, and but it wasn't until I got older that I got into bow hunting as well. But I was never ate up with the small game. Like I always loved deer hunting. Like that was the
Okay.
season that I always kind of preferred. And like small game was more just I would get home because we didn't bow hunt whenever I was growing up. I would get home from school in the fall and I would grab the shotgun and I would head out to we owned 30-ish acres or whatever. And so I just head out the back door and
Okay.
go hunt. After I got home from school or whatever. And small game was more so just like to kill time and go be in the woods or whatever. But
Got it.
the one thing that I kind of find though is like a lot of guys that I've talked to on the podcast that were ate up with small game early or something else early ended up being like some of the best hunters that I've talked to. Like I'll give you an example. So I had Justin Hollinsworth on, kills hammer deer from Ohio, right?
Hmm.
He started off like really kind of running dogs, hunting coons. Like that was like what he was ate up with when he was a kid. Like he actually had like dogs he competed with and stuff like that. And he picked up so much like nuance of like animal behavior and how to track and stuff like that from working with his dogs. And so it just seems like guys who are into small game or something different real heavy always
Hmm.
kind of translated into being a really effective deer hunter. Do you kind of feel the same way that you learned like a bunch of really good principles or something from that small game experience that carried
Yeah,
over?
yeah, yeah, yeah. Like just countless miles in the woods, small game hunting. That
Yeah.
like I hate to say it, I was an angel, but I would slip my shotgun into my truck going to high school and then never make it to school because I would just tear ass out of town and go pheasant hunting all day.
Right.
So I would skip school to go hunting and stuff, and it was always like an obsession I had. And then, but once I got bit with the archery thing, it was over. It was completely over. And I
Right.
was really like, I was really I don't want to say ADHD, but I was pretty hard for me to sit still when I was younger. So small game hunting was just perfect. You know what I mean? Because
Uh,
I could just wear myself out. You know what I mean? Just
right. Yeah.
put some miles on.
That makes sense. I never thought of it that way, where it's just like, when you deer hunt or when you're bow hunting, a lot of times, or gun hunting, whatever it is, when you learn to deer hunt, unless you're out west doing a lot of spot and stalk, you know what I mean? You really kind of are taught through the lens of playing the patient game of finding a spot, setting up, and that's where you sit. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Whereas you're right, small game hunting, I mean, you're moving, trying to find them. And then so you just end up seeing so much more just, mile
Yeah.
wise, of timber,
Yeah.
which means you run across a lot more sign, you run across a lot more critters, you see a lot more animal, like just you see a lot more of everything, which I never really
And
thought
I
of it
was,
through that lens.
and when I was younger, I was interested in deer, so I was paying attention because I did deer hunt. It was only, I would hunt 1 week out of the year with a shotgun when I was a kid, and then maybe me and my dad would get our extended shotgun permit, and we'd hunt a
Hmm.
couple extra weeks into like January.
Right.
But
So, so when
but
you picked up a bow finally, how did that start? How did you adapt? How did things kind of start out for you?
um, oh man, I'm thinking back now. So I learned nothing about tuning. I remember. All right, so I remember buying my first bow and buying a pack of muzzies and slapping a muzzy on, and was dialed in, but I never shot the broadhead, which is like something I'm just so anal with now. Like if I'm gonna practice, I'm gonna shoot the broadhead. I'm gonna shoot the arrow that I'm gonna shoot at a deer. You
Right.
know what I mean? And then I'm gonna sharpen that broadhead and put it in my quiver. This way, I've shot that arrow before. I know what it's gonna do. But when I was younger, I remember buying a pack of muzzies, sighting my bow in field points, and I remember going out and having this doe come in to like 15 yards and letting the arrow rip, and it just did like a somersault in the air, and I skimmed her back, and I'm like, and then I went home and shot the broadheads, and then that was the moment I learned about tuning,
Right.
and
Right.
yeah,
That's
how important it is. And
yeah, yeah. That's a hard lesson right
yeah,
there, right?
so yeah, I was probably yeah, I think I was 20 or 21 when it happened. I can't pinpoint it,
Right. So
but
how many years or how quick after you changed and started kind of focusing on bow hunting was it until you started laying down bucks?
um, 2009, I think I got real serious about it, and I killed a public land like basket 8.
Hmm.
And then and then after that, like it was, I mean, definitely with the help of a few good buddies,
Right.
that I learned, like, you know my buddy Chris Schmidt, he films for a TV show, and I met him, at a younger age when I was learning how to bow hunt, and he was already putting down hammers, and I basically followed his lead for quite a few years, and
Hmm.
you know so
Nice. And
taught me about, he's the one who got me hooked on the moon phase, and all that.
right. And so yeah, I mean, I heard you talk about that before, and so you do follow the moon dog, the red moon, and then overhead
Yep.
underfoot, right?
Yep. Yep. Yep.
Pretty like religiously.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, I've said it before. I've said it a million times. I sound like a broken record, but they should sponsor me or something. Because I could look on my wall and just be like, a red day,
Really.
and every buck is, if I didn't kill it on a bow drive, um, it's typically a day on the moon chart.
Hmm.
Um,
That's
yeah,
crazy.
literally, if I shouldn't say bow drive. If it wasn't the bow drive, or it wasn't during November, like
Mhm.
during the rut, you know,
Right.
um, if it was like a patternable deer, it was an A day. 100% every deer on my wall. It's insane.
Wow. That's crazy, man. Like
It
so
makes you not want to hunt the other days, like.
right. I followed it for one season. Like pretty religiously. I didn't kill anything that year, but I ended up going out on a red day to a piece of public I'd never been to before and just kind of scouted my way through and found a pretty decent setup and I set up and I shit you not, it was and the thing is it's not like people when they look at the overhead underfoot kind of timing of whatever, it's like it might say like let's say 4:30 for example, right? That they're going to get up and move.
Uh-huh.
Well, yeah, but it's like it's around that time. You know what I mean? It's like it's going to be plus or minus on either side,
Okay.
and you also have to kind of take into consideration, right, like how far you might be away from where they're bedded and stuff like that, right? So
Yeah.
they might be
Yeah. There's. Yeah.
yeah. So but regardless, this was September, and I want to say like the moon time was something like I don't know, like 5:30, right? Because it's not getting dark until like 6:30, something like that.
Hmm.
And I shit you not, it was like no less than like 2 to 3 minutes off whenever I saw two shooter bucks walk through, and I didn't get a shot at either of them. They're just like slightly out of reach. I was just set up kind of like in the wrong tree, but I wouldn't have done. I mean, I set up at a decent spot. I just was just slightly out of the game, and it was literally like to a T at the time that the moon dial said it was going to be.
Dude, can I tell you a crazy story?
Yeah.
So the last buck I killed last year, it was January 5th. My subscription for the moon guide, like I used the phone app.
Yep.
So my subscription lapsed, right? And I didn't have it. So I wasn't using the moon guide. I was just getting consistent pictures of this buck. So I sat once for him. I didn't see him. I sat, I think it was, I don't know if it was the next day or 2 days later. Like I just call it my dots, like all my dots lined up, but minus the moon facing. My moon app was expired, and I didn't talk to my buddy. It was late season. I was like, I'm gonna kill this buck if I can get on. If not, whatever. He'll be bigger next year.
Right.
So, my dots lined up as far as like where I didn't have work. The wind was good. The wind was. I was cutting it close, but it was doable. And it was overcast and drizzly, and I was just like, dude, everything's perfect today. I'm gonna go give it a shot. So I wind up killing him. Everything goes down, perfect. I call my buddy. I'm driving home. I didn't even drag the deer out yet. I'm calling my buddy, and I'm all jacked up, and I'm like, dude, he's like, well, what time did you kill him or whatever? And I look back at when I called my dad, because I called my dad right away, like, I got him. So I called my dad, and I forget. I'm gonna make up a time because I don't remember what time. Let's say it was 4:37 something. You know what I mean? It got dark at 5:00. I think I called my dad at 4:37. I go, it must have been like, I don't know, 4:36 or something. You know what I mean?
Right.
And he pulls up the moon chart, and peak activity time that day was like 4:35. red A-day, moon day with the star next to it, and I'm just like, you have to be kidding me. Like I didn't even plan that. Like it's just I just it sounds like some hippie BS, you know what I mean? Oh, I follow the moon, but it works.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I always say, dude, like whatever people use that are successful, like don't if it ain't broke, don't fix it. You know what I mean? Like regardless of what it is, but because like you're putting a lot of the puzzle pieces together. You know what I mean? Like it's
that's what I mean. Yeah, you have to have a lot figured out already, and all your conditions have to be right. You know what I mean?
Right. So, yeah, and the guys that I know that do follow it religiously, that's kind of the thing. It's like, man, they're in the right spot just in general. They're just waiting for the reason why that deer's going to get up and give them 10 minutes of shooting light or whatever the case is. Yeah. You know what I mean? And it's like they've got him figured out. They just need that. They just need him to make the mistake. They know what he's doing. They know where he's at. They just need him to move in time. But but man, so you when we were talking, you got into bow hunting a little bit later, and you killed some hammers, and then we were talking a little bit about you went through like a period of like really bad target panic, and you recently picked up shooting a trad bow. I think has it been what, 2 years going into your third season?
This is my third season with it. So it's been, how do I put this? It's been 2 full years, and this will be my third full year. The season before that, go back 3 seasons, I started at the end of that year. So
Got it.
I guess that was like 2019. I shot a doe with a longbow in January, like late season. And I had a rough year that year. I didn't kill a buck, and I had an opportunity at a buck, and I hit one and didn't find it because of target panic. I could tell you that whole story.
So what made you change to traditional archery? Because like in my mind, it's something I've played around with. Like I've got a recurve here at the house that I'll shoot once in a while, right? And I have an interest in at some point hunting a season, a couple seasons, whatever. I end up doing. What really drives it is I hunted Kansas last year and I absolutely loved it. And so one of the things I have in my mind is like I really want to kill a deer in Kansas from the ground with traditional equipment. I just think that would be one of the coolest hunts to do. But when I think about it, I'm like, man, it's so much harder, at least in my opinion, right? And I would just think that shooting a compound and having target panic and then moving to a traditional bow and increasing the I guess the difficulty like almost seems counterintuitive. So why did you make the change ultimately?
It's just something I always wanted to do,
Hmm.
and I tried it back in 2015, and I sat a couple times with the bow, and I missed a doe, and but you know what? I knew nothing about tuning. You know,
Hmm.
I was tuning compounds at that point, but like I didn't really have down like the tuning with a stick bow. I didn't really get that far into it. I just thought I can go out and sit, slap a Zwicky on there, and go out and sit and kill one, and I hung it up real quick. I was like, you know what? This isn't for me. But my eventually with the compound, my target panic got so bad, and that and to be honest with you, I've never killed a buck over 22 yards. So
Hmm.
I'm like what is the and I shoot instinctive.
Hmm.
So I mean, it still creeps up on me, man. I still get target panic,
Hmm.
but it actually like in the beginning it alleviated my target panic because I was just looking where I want to hit.
Hmm.
And I was, you're seeing the arrow. I've heard people call it gap instinctive. Like you're seeing the arrow, but you're looking where you want to hit.
Right.
There's not a big green pin glowing in my face, going
Right.
the pin gets close and you go
Right.
So it kind of eliminated the pin, I think, and that eliminated some of my target panic.
Got it.
So and I'm the type of dude. I know some people are like yeah. I can kill a deer, at 15 yards, 16 yards, but you put a crowd of people behind me and I crumble, man.
Hmm.
It gets in my
Interesting.
head, but I've been working on that.
Yeah, I had a rough year the one year, and I shoot a compound, and I ended up moving to a thumb release, and that seemed to help a little bit. And then I ended up moving to like just shooting with both eyes open instead of just one eye, and that
Okay.
actually took away pretty much all of my target panic or all my kind of anticipating my shot. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And I think part of it for
There's
me was just having a wider field of view to where like my periphery wasn't cut off.
if anybody ever heard the things that go through my head when I'm about to kill deer. When I was shooting a compound, I would it sounds so stupid. I would pretend like you're a teacher in a classroom and you're going to show everybody where to hit the deer.
Hmm. Nice.
So like so so the
Today,
pin is your laser
class,
pointer.
right?
And I'd be like, yeah, today class, right there. I would say that in my head, dude, every time I kill a deer,
Right.
right there.
Man,
you know. So,
whatever gets
but
the
it would,
job done.
yeah, but it would trick my brain into putting that pin on the deer. Like
Hmm. Yeah, man. It's
so.
like we got to trick ourselves sometimes. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
it's for sure. So so when you changed to traditional equipment, like because you said you'd never killed a deer under or further than 22 yards, which is
I mean,
awesome.
I've shot does, at
Right. Bucks, I
30
guess.
yards,
Yeah.
but a buck, I've always kept it close.
Hmm.
And in my head, I'm like, you know what? I'm getting these deer in close. I'm like, well, you know what I mean? Let's shrink it a little bit more, not much. I mean, I like with the stick bow, I wouldn't shoot past 20 probably.
Right. Right.
Um,
So
you know,
did using a stick bow, did it change your approach to hunting at all, or how you uh I guess how you kind of find your setups like in trees and stuff like that? Did you change anything
ab-
about that?
absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
And I learned it was a big learning curve. My first year was rough. I was able to, I managed, but it was rough. Like I've talked about this before, but I was hanging tree stands too high. Like with
Mm,
my compound, I'd hang them 30 feet. Like thinking the higher I can get myself up in a tree, like the better.
right.
And you go 25 plus feet in a tree and put a deer at 14 yards, and you're shooting straight down.
Yeah.
So now you're shrinking the vitals. Your limb wants to hit the tree. I was overdrawing.
Hmm.
And shooting over a lot of deers. I probably missed before I killed the buck with the recurve. I probably missed 3 or 4 does. Just shooting over their backs.
Right.
And that just made me at that point. That just got me more determined, frustrated. I went to my buddy's farm and I hung a tree stand and I had a Mackenzie deer target that I moved every position angle you could think of until I had it down. Like 10 yards, 12 yards, 15 yards, 17 yards, like every angle, every position. And that's when I realized I started hanging all my sets lower.
Mhm.
I'll forever hunt a double tree if I can. Like
Right.
if I can get into any double where I can hang my bow in front of me, at 14, 15, maybe 16 feet.
Yeah.
better cover. Now I look for better cover.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what's tough about hunting a buck with the recurve or longbow, whatever, is getting past those does.
Yeah.
If you're sticking it out and waiting for a buck that you're hunting, you got to pass the test of every other deer that walks by you, because chances are he's not going to be the first one.
Right. What?
So that's the struggle for me, is just getting past them old mature does, because some of them does been around a lot longer than the buck
Right.
you're hunting.
Were you seeking out any different types of areas, or did you kind of have, or were you kind of still focusing on the same places where you were typically killing deer previously, but just slightly changing your setup to accommodate, using traditional
Yeah.
equipment? Is that more so the
Yeah,
case?
same places, same places, different trees, different, a
Right.
little closer to where,
Right.
one setup, I got this one spot I've been hunting for years. I moved. over 20 yards to a different tree.
Right. And then, and
Um,
so what do you think the hardest kind of part of making the change from a compound to a stick bow was for you, at least?
mm, I don't know. That's a tough question. It's multiple things. It's not just one. Like the whole tree stand thing. Practicing from the ground all summer and then going, okay, I'm ready. And then opening day, you get in a tree and you're like, wow, this is something I should have been practicing.
Right. Right.
That just learning, like, I'm far more a bow hunter than an archer. You know what I mean? I'm
Hmm.
not. I'm really. I'm not the best shot out there, but I seem to focus in and make it happen in that moment. So like, just sticking, like finding your style of shooting. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like I found with traditional archery, there's no right and wrong. It's what works for you.
Right.
Like you know what I mean? Some people, when they shoot, their follow through, they come back, they touch their shoulder.
Right.
But then you watch Olympic shooters and nothing moves. Their hand stays put and their bow arm doesn't move an inch.
Right.
They don't have this big dramatic break. And I always, like, I got some crap for that in the past about, not my string, what am I trying to say? The hand that my string hand, if you want to call it that,
Hmm.
doesn't fly back, and touch my shoulder.
Right.
So I've heard like dead release, you know what I mean? I'm like, dead release, dead deer. Like, I don't know.
Right.
Like,
Yeah, they're both dead. What's up?
yeah.
That's funny.
But
That's funny. Yeah, it just seems to me like I'm intrigued by it, and it's something that I want to kind of put in my arsenal. But I also know that I need to have the time to dedicate to shooting enough with it. Because
yeah.
I do play around with it at my house some. And and I got another buddy. My buddy Todd is a big traditional archer, and that's how he's hunted
Uh-huh.
for years. And there's a lot more for me to learn just in terms of like arrow and tuning your arrow as opposed to the bow, right? And things like that, where it's just like a little bit more attention to detail than I probably have time for right now, is kind of how it seems to me. Like
Yeah.
with my compound, it's like I take to my buddy's shop, I get tuned. We shoot bullet holes. I throw a broadhead on it.
Yeah.
I tune my broadhead, which doesn't take me much time, and it's like I'm ready to rock and roll. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And it's like, and I'm set.
Yeah.
Um,
When, like, you hear people say journey, like, oh, my traditional journey. And in the beginning, I'm like, oh, like, all right, yeah, how much of a journey could it be? But it truly is, because you're going to go through 10 different types of arrow setups. 10,
mhm,
you're going to change your anchor point 4 or 5 times, before you really settle into, like, you find a style that you like and fits you. I think that's the hardest part, like
right,
getting through all that, because how your buddy shoots isn't how you're going to shoot.
right,
It's never, I mean, maybe it is, but you're probably going to go through a ton of different phases before you settle into, you know,
right. Yeah, it's funny
I was,
because I'll shoot with my dad once in a while when I'll go visit him. We haven't done it in a long time, but this is before he moved back to PA. I went down to visit him when he lived in the Carolinas, and I'd always take my bow and we would shoot. And he's like, and he has a couple recurve. He had a couple recurves at his house. And he's like, "Hey, you want to bust out the traditional bow?" And I'm like, "Sure." Now the old man probably hasn't picked up that traditional bow and shot it in like 10 years, and that's not even like joking, right? And I had been kind of shooting like every so often, so we pick up the bow. The old man grabs it, and he's the one who showed me originally how to shoot, a recurve. And he shoots instinctive. And the way he taught me was, he's like, it's like throwing a baseball. Like, you were good at throwing a baseball, just pick the spot you want to hit and let it rip. you know?
Hmm.
And so he picks up the bow and just like pinwheels the target.
Oh
He
man.
probably hadn't picked up a bow in like 10 years, you know what I mean?
Wow.
And I pick up the bow and I think I got a little bit of panic. I got a little bit of what you got going on where he was watching and he just like took me to school. And so I flung one over the target's back and that was it. I was like, yeah, I think I'm good on today. But you know, the old man showing me up, dude. But
That's funny, man. I got my father in the traditional archery,
oh,
and
did you? That's awesome.
yeah, he started shooting a bow, you know, a recurve right after I did, and he whoops up on me, man. He whoops my
Does
ass.
it?
He's like been shooting tournaments. He got first place in
Nice.
the senior division and some state championship. Like he's killing it, man.
Nice.
He shoots better than me, hands down.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome.
So, but he's a good aimer. My dad shoots gap, so like he knows his gaps, and he's aiming with the arrow tip.
Okay.
And he's just, you know, he's retired cop, steady, you know, like good. He's just a good aimer. Where
Yeah.
I need to just, you know, I need less thinking for me, you know, and just
Right.
look
He
where I want to hit and
Yeah,
let it
he's
rip.
spent a lot of time behind a weapon, shooting just in
Yeah,
general. Yeah, which is
yeah.
certainly doesn't hurt. Um,
So
man, I want to talk a little bit about your hunting style, dude. I'm just curious. You know, I'm always curious whenever I have guys on what their approach really kind of is. So I guess we'll start here. Do you like? Would you say in general, are you a more aggressive hunter, or do you feel like you are a more measured hunter that you take a more measured approach?
it's it's um it's definitely situational for me.
Yeah.
You know? So during the rut, I'd probably say I'm the most aggressive, where I'll bomb into just doe bedding, like find some doe bedding, and I know I can go over that story again. When we talked briefly
Hmm.
before this podcast, I told you the story about the the doe. I had the buck and the doe that were bedded down to get like locked down together
Yeah,
in
yeah.
November.
Yep.
So like I'll do stuff like that, just like go in the AM and hang right in the middle of a bedding area
Right.
and see who rolls in, you know. But
Right. And yeah, let's talk about that hunt because that was like you base like you said, you just kind of bombed in and like
yeah, so
all up in their business.
and I don't know if they would consider that a bump and dump, but I just got done listening to the Twisto podcast, their bump and dump episode,
Yep.
and I mean that was like it was November 2nd or something like that, and I go in and I'm trying to get back to like up this finger of like where there's this greenbrier thicket. It's, you know, it's tight, it's in between houses, but it's a pretty good chunk of land. And I'm hiking back there, and I blow a doe out, and I look, I'm like, oh wait, there's more deer, and I just see a rack, like pretty good, like good browse, good twos, like probably like 130-inch deer. And I'm like, okay. So at that point, I didn't, you know, I just went about what I was going to do that day anyway, and I wound up seeing squat.
Right.
So I went home that night, and I'm like, that doe was bedded there with that buck. That buck wasn't leaving her, you know. So it was just fresh on my brain. I'm like, bump and dump. I'm like, okay. And I don't really like morning hunts, you know. Like I'm if I could sleep in, I do. I hate to say it, but
Hey
so
man, there's no shame
I
in that
got
game,
fired
dude.
up.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I got fired up, and I went. You know, I got in the. I forget what time it got light out that time, but I went and hung in the dark, like 20 yards from where that doe was bedded. And sure enough, like 7:30, it was you know it was light out, and she comes in beds exactly where I saw her, and who's behind her?
Hmm.
That 130-inch buck, and she's bedded, and he's pacing her back and forth. So I'm 20 yards, let's say like south of her, and he's going like um, north to east, right? And his
Hmm.
closest point he's getting to me is 25 yards. So he's going from 25 yards to like 35, and he's pacing her back and forth. And I'm just like, every time he gets to 20 yards, I'm like, come on, just take like 5 more steps towards me. Like, you know, he tortured me for about, I don't know, a half hour. You know, it might have been shorter. It felt like, felt like it was that long. And with that, I had this real heavy, big bodied, like 8-pointer come run him off. Like,
Hmm.
just completely come from behind me and put his horns up that deer's ass and just run him out of sight. The doe never gets up, but This buck runs that deer out of sight. Now they're both gone. And I'm like, at this point, I'm just chalking it up to like an
Welcome to
awesome morning. You know what I
right.
mean?
Awesome
I'm like,
morning. Welcome to
I'm like,
November.
dude, I'm like, I'm gonna go home happy, like a happy man. That was awesome just to get to see. So about 15 minutes later, he comes back. He's all puffed up, you know, walking through the woods, and I'm like, I'm killing this deer. I'm like, this isn't the deer I came in to kill, but this deer's running the show, you know.
Right.
And he winded up basically pacing the other side. He came around the other side of her and walked directly underneath me, and that was at a longbow at the time, and I shot him like right between the shoulder blades.
Damn.
And yeah, he was right underneath me, and I think if I'm like, you know, like I said, if my stand was higher, if you know, at that point I was learning, you know what I mean? I was
right.
definitely had a little bit more of an idea what to expect when I draw and point my bow straight down with a longbow.
Right.
And
Yeah.
I dropped him with the first arrow, and then he was still moving, and I was on the phone with my buddy, like, whoa. I get fired up, man. And
Yeah.
I could barely talk, and I had a little pouch, like my jacket had a little pouch, right? And I'm like, hold on. And I put my phone in the pouch, and I knocked another arrow and shot him again, and my buddy got to hear it all. He's like, I picked the phone up, I'm like, okay, he's dead. My buddy's like, did you just shoot him again? I'm like, yeah.
Dude, that's awesome. So I was going to actually ask you touched on it whenever you were kind of telling that story, and I was going to ask if you preferred mornings or evenings typically, and you said you prefer mornings. Now, does that hold true? Well, let me ask it this way:
No. I'm an evening guy.
You're
an evening guy.
Evening guy through and through, no matter what time of year.
Yeah. Yep. Unless I'm in a situation where I think that I can, you know, because unless I'm in a situation where I think that the morning's appropriate, like that, you know.
Right.
When it comes to bedding stuff, but in the evening, I'm typically setting up in a pinch point in the evening.
Right, and you're primarily for the most part like would you classify yourself as a bed hunter? I guess is what I wanted to ask.
Outskirts, you know, like in that instant, I was in it, but usually I leave the deer alone, man. I don't want to go tromping through. I'm like low impact, as low impact as I could possibly be. I would prefer to hunt the outskirts of like some thick stuff, you know,
right?
Greenbrier, CRP,
right? But you're focusing on bedding areas, yeah. Because that's the thing. I think a lot of people kind of get confused is whenever they hear people talk about hunting beds, they think that you have to hunt right over top of them, and the reality is that you know a buck could have, depending on how big the bedding area is, he could have multiple beds in that area. You know what I mean? And like you know, and so you're really just kind of hunting the bedding area that he's spending time in. I have a few friends that will hunt beds, like Greg will hunt a bed specifically. He will literally hunt on top of a bed, waiting for that buck to come back. He likes to do it in the mornings too, and has killed them in the morning doing that. I'm curious, man. Like all the deer you've killed, are they more? Do you find you have more success in October, or do you find you have more success, say, like in November?
I've thought about this myself, and it's pretty even, man. It's pretty spread out. Like I think.
Do you prefer one or the other?
I definitely have more September, October deer.
Okay.
You know, patternable deer than the November. November is just crazy. You know, it's anybody who's patterning a buck is their worst nightmare. You know, because he's going to be 5 miles away on somebody else's property, and
right.
And then late season. I've never been a late season guy, but the last 2 years I've done pretty well late season.
Right.
You know, late season's tough for me because they're usually herded up.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And if the deer are moving and they're coming by, you're getting every deer in the woods, and that the big guy's going to be the last one usually.
Right. What time frame of October do you prefer? Is there a specific week that tickles your fancy more so than others?
Probably the 13th to the end of October. You know, it's the Halloween.
It's funny you say that. I was wondering what you were going to say, man, because like for the longest time I was more of a November guy, right? And and it wasn't until probably like the last 2, maybe 3 years that my script has flipped where I just prefer October now, and I actually prefer the middle of October. And a couple reasons is like one, I think like big deer will make a mistake during that time frame if you know where to look, and there's typically fewer people out. during that time of year. And so if you are
Hmm.
patterning an area or a specific deer, you usually will run into less variables that you can't control, you know? So that's one of the
Yeah.
things. And I wanted to mention it whenever you said earlier that your days off are Tuesday and Wednesday. I'm like, dude, that's perfect because that's the part of the week
Oh
when
yeah.
no one's out.
Oh, it sucks for a social life, but during
Right.
hunting season, I mean, I'd definitely rather be out on the weekdays than,
Right.
you know.
Yeah, for
And
sure.
even like even in some, like, some places I have permission to hunt, or 3 acres behind, in a cul-de-sac, or
Hmm.
like, I would prefer everyone to be at work. You know what I mean? Like, if
Yeah.
I'm coming in and out of the woods, like, it's,
Yeah.
I've dealt with the police a couple times where, like, we have a lot of people that move here from the city,
Hmm.
and they've never seen anybody in camo with a bow and arrow in the woods before, so
Right.
they usually call the cops, and then
Right.
I'm like, they're like, "What are you doing? It ruins your hunt, though." You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
try and I try and be low key about, getting in and out. I don't wear camo.
Hmm.
I just don't believe in it anymore.
Right.
I've killed more deer in a flannel and Carhartts now than, I have a Sika jacket because it's warm.
Right. Right.
You know, but
Yeah. Warmth is key. But yeah, man, you can kill them
yeah, just
in
earth
anything.
earth tones, man. Like
Yeah.
greens, browns, khaki, like.
Yep.
So,
Exactly.
so, and it kind of like it kind of works out for, you know like, not freaking people out in neighborhoods too. Like, you're not.
Staying incognito. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Exactly. Yeah. So I'm curious, man. Like, so that going back to that November hunt, that deer hung out for like a little while, right? Like you had some time with that deer.
yeah,
And so
yep.
do you feel like there's less pressure when you release an arrow whenever you spend more time with a deer? That might be a wrong way to ask the question, but
No, I know exactly what you mean. Yeah, I do. Yeah, I feel like your initial shock of seeing a buck you want to kill is like you get this rush,
yeah.
and I'm still like dude. I get the
Oh, I'm
same.
same way. I'm same way for a
I
doe.
get the I get the same knee knock that I got when I was, 15 years old, like, to this day. So controlling that I've learned to slow things down. Like, there's usually a lot of cursing in my head, like cursing at myself, like, don't. I'm like, don't f this up, don't f this up. You're gonna hate yourself, like, it's a lot of talking myself down. So
Right.
if that animal is around me for longer, it kind of just gives me a moment to be like, okay, like, I just, if it happens, it happens. Like,
Right.
don't rush it.
Yeah.
So
No, I feel the same. I feel the same way. It's like the more I get to spend time with them, the more I can kind of think. It also gives me time to think through what the scenarios might be. As
yeah,
far as like where the shot opportunities are. It's like, so I know I got one here. I know I have one here. And so if he's not anywhere in near either of those areas, I don't even have to worry about it. I'm watching him, but
yeah,
I'm not like in going to take the shot mode until I know he's about to give me the opportunity. There's
yeah,
also the
yeah.
the challenge of like when do you draw, which is a whole other can of worms and stuff like that, depending on
I'm
your
a
setup. But
I'm a big time, like, waiter. Like, I will wait for the perfect shot. Like, I don't like that. Like, I hate that feeling in your gut when you make a bad shot or you miss.
hmm
Like, so I'd rather take a couple extra seconds, and if I get busted, I get busted. Like,
right,
um, last October, I killed a buck that was, um, he came in. He was like 25 yards out, like quartering away, perfect, wide open, and dude, my fingers were on the string. I was like, I was about to draw back and go, this is my opportunity. It's now or never. I'm getting a 25-yard shot. That's what I'm getting, and that's like, I don't want to shoot over 20. You know what I mean? But
right,
I was starting to talk myself into taking that shot. And with that, like, I'm sitting there contemplating. He turns around and walks to 15 yards, and I drill him.
right.
I'm like, see, I could have, if I was like, younger me would have rushed it. I probably would have took the 25-yard shot,
hmm
not like the outcome.
Yeah, man.
But
So it's interesting because you've been killing hammers for years, and you're doing it in a state that a lot of people don't think of when they think of killing good deer. You know what I mean?
yeah,
And you're doing it with consistency. What type? So we talked about like you focus on kind of hunting, bedding areas and um, in and you're more of a guy who likes to pattern, deer in kind of that October time frame. What does a setup look like for you? Like what pieces or what sign or aspects need to kind of, we talked about the moon a little bit, but what aspects all need to kind of come together for you? I'm not necessarily talking about weather in this moment, like for the day of the hunt,
Yeah.
but like for a spot, like when you
Terrain.
walk
You're
in,
talking like terrain?
yeah, like when you walk
Okay.
into an area, you're like, yeah, I'll give you a for example. Like for me, I want to be in and around either where I know a buck's bedded or in and around doe bedding during that October time frame. I want to be I want to know that there's a good primary scrape somewhere close by that they're going to be kind of even like
Yeah. Yeah.
making their way to check. Or I want some kind of, white oak or something that's dropping in the general area that I know is going to kind of be attracting a deer. Or I want like some form of thermal hub where they're going to have a thermal advantage, like a wind advantage there that I need to figure out how to beat. Like those are the things that I typically kind of look for. Like what are you looking for in a spot where you're trying to set up?
So a lot of the times I don't have a choice. You know what I mean? When you get permission on 3 acres,
Right.
that's what you have.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what you have. And baiting is legal in our state.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm basically baiting and running trail cameras to locate deer.
Right.
Because I don't want to waste my time somewhere where there's not a buck to kill, which is 90% of the woods that I have to hunt. There's
Mm-hmm.
not a deer that I want to kill. You know?
Right.
Oh no, I totally off topic. That's another reason I got in the traditional. I wanted to make that 115, 120-inch deer a trophy again.
Right. That's a great point, man.
You know what I mean? I was really struggling to find deer that I wanted to kill, and so I just wanted to touch on that real quick. Like
Yeah.
that, it makes a doe a trophy. And like you shoot a doe, and you're just like the first doe that I killed with the longbow. I drove it around the back of my pickup truck like it was a 160-inch deer. I was like, look at this! I'm like, look where I hit it, right behind the shoulder. What's up?
Right. That's awesome, man.
So,
that's a great point, though, man. Like you increase the challenge and increases the value.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, yeah, it's great.
Yeah. Yeah. So not to get off topic, I just popped into my brain, but if I'm hunting bigger woods, like terrain wise, like what we have going on here, I'm looking for like a swamp bottom, like an edge somewhere that transfers into like oaks or any edges. You know what I mean? Like
right.
like I said, we have a lot of green. Like here we have greenbrier, swampy bottoms. I want to hunt the edge of that greenbrier where it clears up. I don't want to go tromping in there, but I want to hunt the edge of it because I've set up on the edge of a greenbrier thicket. And I don't leave anything in the woods. I don't leave stands in the woods. So like I'm hanging a stand every time I hunt.
Right.
And I've hung a stand and got all set up, and 20 minutes later had, 4 does stand up 40 yards away from me that were bedded in greenbrier. Like they hold so tight in there that it just makes me think, like it makes me think about sound a little bit more. Like being quiet and getting in.
Yeah. It sounds like you kind of focus on like areas of like diversity of habitat where you've got two things kind of coming together.
If I can, yeah. If I can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes sense. It's always like, I always tell people if they ask and if they're like, hey, big woods, like where do I start? I'm like, man, wherever you see two things merging. Like that's, if you don't know anything else, start there and start walking along it. Eventually you'll see deer sign, then just follow it. And that'll
even like cedars, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You get a patch of like cedars in a woods. I'm gonna hunt the edge of that. Probably,
man, I love me some. I got a cedar thicket set up for this year that I found scouting this off season. I kind of overlooked, truthfully, for past 3 seasons, and I just so happened to, I was looking at my maps and stuff like that, and was like, oh man, this kind of looks interesting. And so the next time I was out, kind of scouting the general area, I was like, man, I'm going to swing through here. And sure enough, it's like a cedar thicket that I've kind of overlooked for the past couple of years. And I walked through it, and there's just all kinds of rubs all through there. And nothing really for scrapes or anything like that, but just like a ton of rubs. And so I ended up just hanging a camera on a whim, like on the edge of it. And I went back and checked it. And there are just, and I made a mock scrape actually there too. And there are just deer. Like the next day, I had does hitting that mock scrape, and basically I've had deer hitting that mock scrape pretty much every day since.
Way.
Yeah, and so it's just like a super high traffic area, and that's kind of like what I thought it would be, and it just kind of turned out. So I'm stoked. I didn't have anything for a decent buck on that card pool, at least at this point, which I kind of expected.
Yeah.
That. I didn't think that it would have anything until fall started to roll around. But
another thing. Oh god.
No, I was just gonna say, but it confirmed. Like my first confirmation was just that I'm getting good deer traffic there, and so the next thing will be to just kind of validate that there's a decent buck in there I want to chase.
Nice, nice.
Yeah. What were you gonna say?
Uh, I was gonna say another thing is in heavy snowfall. Like,
Mm,
you know what I mean? Like
yeah.
underneath them cedars where the snow's a little, and sometimes there's no snow under them. You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
try and catch deer bedded in there or not.
Yeah, I found some. Well, that's where my dog found a shed this year. Was actually in a cedar thicket this year, which was it was his first shed, so he was stoked about that.
That's awesome.
Yeah, dude. So you made the change to traditional equipment, and then you just like went on a tear. And I think it was like you've killed four hammer bucks in the past 2 seasons. Your first 2 seasons, your first two full seasons of shooting traditional equipment, right?
Uh, yeah, five.
Five. Sorry, man.
Five, yeah.
Didn't mean to slight you on one.
Dude, no, I just like I'm ecstatic, dude. Like I still like I don't know, like you know what? Part of it, I think it made me work harder. You know, like
Okay.
I was getting a little lazy with the compound. You know, I had my spots that I went to, like you know, I try and get something going on, but like knowing that I needed to be closer and knowing that I wanted to just I had more of a drive to kill with that, you know, because
Hmm.
it was new, you know, and I'm like it was kind of a dream of mine forever to do it. You know, I had my buddy years ago, always my buddy Willie always shot a stick bow. He had a Black Widow when I was like 19. And I would, you know, like that's awesome, man. Like I can't do it, but that's cool, you know.
Right.
So it was always in the back of my brain that it's something I wanted to do. But
And that deer you killed this year was a hammer, dude. What was the deal with? Where'd you end up? Where? So what was the story of that deer?
um, that's the January one.
Yeah, it was. No, I think this was the October one. The big, like, was he? Is a big, like, tall, freaky eight? Was that it?
Okay, yeah, yeah, that was January.
Oh, that was January.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yep. And I actually you know, I know some people are against it, but I actually killed that deer right over bait,
Okay. Yeah,
and I'm not against it, man. You know what I mean? And
dude.
anybody,
If it's
if
legal,
anybody, if anybody wants to frown upon it, I welcome them to come to New Jersey because it's different if you're in a non-baiting state and you're baiting. Okay, you might have an advantage, but this is New Jersey where everybody has a bait pile in their backyard. I could shed hunt and find bait piles, you know, bait piles, bait piles, bait piles.
right,
So it was strategic baiting, you know what I mean, on the
right,
outside of a bedding area. And I basically had pattern. I was trying to locate a different buck. That's what happened. I was trying to locate a different buck. Got permission to cross the piece of woods I was hunting to try and find this other deer. And I had this buck pop up, and it was just like I'm like he's coming in at you know an hour before dark. Like why would I go try and cut him off? You know what I mean? He's coming in daylight. And that was the one I told you before. It was like the rainy drizzle day, and my
right,
moon guide was my subscription lapsed, and I didn't know
right,
it was an A day.
right, right,
And so actually that deer it was a field edge, like I call it a field, but it was cut grass, you know, in someone's yard.
right,
And I had a southwest wind, which was blowing actually where he was coming from, but it was blowing out into the cut grass. And I knew he wasn't going to walk the cut grass in daylight. Probably, you know, he could. So I kind of gave that deer the wind. You know, when before I said the wind was iffy, it was
hmm,
kind of borderline. He had the wind in his face, but my wind was quartering out into the field. So it was a nail biting like 10 minutes, you know, because you know, big bucks typically come in, they stand 40 yards out, and they do the scan,
right.
they check everything,
Yep.
and like I'm like, okay, I just knew the wind could swirl at any moment. Any moment the wind swirls, he's gone. I'm like,
Right.
okay. He does like the you know the scan, and the
That's the
second
worst,
he
dude. Whenever you're like, come on,
oh
dude,
dude, I'm just
just,
like
you just like, be stupid. Just make the stupid mistake.
I'm standing up. I'm standing up with my bow at this point, and I'm just like, how do I squint my eyes? I don't know. I just feel like that,
Like you can't
like
see
you're
me.
a
Yeah,
kid.
I do the same
Yeah,
thing.
you can't
Yeah.
see me. I'm like squinting my eyes, looking at him, and the second he took his first step, I'm like, you just committed. Like I knew he committed, and I had tension on the string like at that moment, and he came in with broadside, and I hit him. I hit him good. He ran. Not. I expected him to run back where he was bedding,
Hmm.
and he ran towards the road and stopped on the edge of the road. So I'm basically in the corner of like I have a road,
Hmm.
and then a lady's cut like grass lawn where my wind's blowing out to, so the road's behind me. He ran straight past me under my stand after I killed him, after I shot him, stood on the side of the road with cars passing, got wobbly, and fell over.
Jeez.
I was like, I didn't get to enjoy the moment. I slid down the tree like a fire pole, and I like ran out there and grabbed him before somebody came by and was like, oh, antlers, and cut his head off, like,
Right, right, yeah.
so that was definitely a memorable hunt. Like, just insane. I'm like, why did you run that way? Like,
Of all the places to run, right?
yeah, with
Yeah.
arrow hit the offside shoulder, so the arrow's sticking out of him,
People
and he's
driving down the road like
and he's
getting
standing on the side of the road, dude, with an arrow hanging out of him. I'm like, oh my god, this is my worst nightmare.
Dude, I had a buddy hunting in the suburbs, Taylor Chamberlain, and he
Mm.
hunts in around DC, and he shot one that ended up in the person's pool.
Oh my.
Which is like, I don't know that you can get much worse. He was like, yeah, pretty much ruined that guy's pH level in the pool. Like, it was a bad
Yeah,
deal.
right. Yeah, it's
But
deer blood and pool.
yeah, yeah. But so you
But
killed.
my biggest fear was that he was going to do his final like bolt, and he was just going to go run across the road and get hit. Like,
Right, right, yeah.
that'd be devastating, but
Yeah, then you got
it
to,
worked out.
yeah, that would be a bad conversation to have with whoever was driving the car too. Like, they hit your deer. It's
Yeah,
like,
right.
you know. But
Yeah,
so before that though, man, you killed one I think on October 13th or something as well, right?
yeah, yep, yep, yep.
That was a killer buck too, man. Like, what was the deal? What was the deal with that one? Like, that's another hammer 8 point. Like, I'm actually looking at a picture of him now. Like, he's got some great mass, some good like pearls on his bases.
Yeah, yeah. He was a super nice deer. I'm trying to think back now. Now, all right. So that deer, I'm going back and forth between two different properties. That deer was on another camera. I'm trying to think how far, maybe a mile, like through a neighborhood though.
Hmm.
Through a neighborhood, across a road. Boom, he's showing up daylight every day there. And now it's like I'm just waiting for the right wind.
Right.
So it's a day before I'm about to be off work for 2 days. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna pull this card and I'm gonna figure out, where I'm gonna strike for these 2 days. Am I gonna just go try and shoot a doe somewhere, or am I gonna hunt this spot? So I pull the card and I get pictures of legs, people people legs,
Hmm.
and I'm like, man, I'm like, god damn it, I'm like, the buck's gone.
Right.
He's just people pictures right in the beginning of the card, beginning of the camera roll, and the buck is gone. So now I'm like, all right. I go and pull my other card from my spot. Like, it's got to be close to a mile, dude. Like, through a neighborhood too. Never seen that deer there. Boom, he pops up. It's a little greenbrier thicket, like tiny, tiny, 4 acres. Boom, he's there every day in gray light. Um, so those people, I made them shift. You know what I mean? They
Hmm.
booted him out of there, and I checked the camera. Yeah, so he's gray light there, and I look at the next 3 days, and they're red 8 days,
Hmm.
and the wind is good, and everything's like perfect. And that was the year when I was telling you before that stood at 25 yards
Yep.
for like a little bit, and I was gonna, I'm like, is this my opportunity? And then he turned around and made his way out to a field that's over there,
That's crazy,
and
man. He's a great
uh,
buck too, man. October 13th, October lull, when people say you can't kill good
yeah,
bucks. You know what I mean? It's like
yep.
they'll
Uh,
move. And that's interesting that he shifted after and then you still
and
were able to.
so that evening I had the deer started funneling out early, so I'm like, okay, it's an A day. Like, this is a good sign. I was to the point where I saw every deer, every like squirrely spike that I had on camera, one half rack. I saw every deer that I had on camera except for him.
Hmm.
So I'm just sitting there like, come on, come on, come on. And I looked up and I caught movement, and he's just doing that scan, man, before he stepped out into the open. Like
Hmm.
thick, thick, overgrown field. I actually called a friend with a dog to find him,
Hmm.
dude, because I hit him like right behind, like perfect, right behind the shoulder, and he did like 5 bounds in this field and then just like disappeared. And I get down, I had good blood, and I'm like a little. I was gonna just back out, just go home. But when I got down to grab my arrow, um, there was like blood everywhere, and I'm like, oh man, I'm like, he's dead right up here. And I walked I mean, when I say thick overgrown field, like CRP, like over my head, like I'm parting the seas with my arms,
Right.
like swimming through it, And the blood just disappeared, stopped, and I did a little circle, and I'm like, I started to panic. I'm like, oh my god, but I could smell them. You know what I mean? I could
Hmm.
smell deer, like I could smell like arsal glands and like just deer. So I wasn't freaking out too bad, but I was nervous. I went home and I'm like, you know what? I don't want to mess around. I called my buddy with the dog, and I was standing from where I did my little circle. I was standing like 10 yards away from him, and I couldn't see him.
That's
But it
funny,
was
man.
cool to get my buddy out. It was cool to get him out with the dog, and
Right.
get like be able to get like my other two buddies involved. And
Yeah. Yeah. And it's better to be safe than sorry too, man, in those instances. Like
yeah, I broke my rule already right there. Like I usually I back out right away and come
right.
back, but I
Yeah.
thought it was a home run. Well,
We're,
it was, but I just couldn't see him.
yeah, he's not going to be less dead when you show up later. It's like
Yeah,
so man,
yeah.
so what do you think this run of like this $5 run you've been on, especially after transitioning to traditional equipment? What like when you think back on those deer, like what has been the key to consistently like to this consistency that you've had these past couple years?
Not having a life. Yeah, not having a life.
Right, right.
Um, Luckily, I have a girlfriend that supports me and sticks with my crazy ass because yeah, like once I get anxious, I get real anxious before hunting season because I know once it starts, like that's over. Like
Yeah.
you know, I put everything on the line. Like if my dots line up, I might call out of work or do something stupid I shouldn't do, but
Right.
I just live for it, man. That's it.
What's your plan for this year, man? Do you have do you have any targets? I know you don't run, you still have yet to kind of get trail cameras out, but do you know of any leftovers from last year or anyone that you have your eye on right now that maybe you've glassed up?
Um, so the deer, the January buck, I said I was looking for a different buck when I
Yeah.
found him. Um, I'm hoping that deer is still kicking around, but it would be I mean, it would truly be a miracle if he was.
Right.
We got hit with EHD real bad last year.
Okay.
So I'm hoping it doesn't hit us this year. Like I hope we don't get hit back to back.
Hmm.
The deer that I actually killed in January, uh, his hooves, dude, were all tore up and bloody, like
Hmm.
shedding. And my buddy talked to a conservation officer that said that's a sign that they survived DHD.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so I never knew that, but that was
Yeah.
pretty interesting.
Yeah. It's kind of crazy. So when you pattern these bucks, man, are you a lot of times like you may not have year over year information on them? You're patterning them within the same season.
I always try and keep history of bucks, man, and it always seems like someone new pops up. Like where did he come from? Whether I just don't recognize him from the year before, and
Right.
I'm really bad at saving SD cards, man. I'm usually like I check them. I need to start. I need to start saving more pictures because a couple deer that I've killed, I'm like, I think I have pictures of him last year, but I have no way to go back and look. 'Cause he wasn't a shooter last year, so I didn't save the picture. But
Right.
I need to start saving pictures of like up and comers.
Yeah, I do the same thing. Like I've got a
So
folder that's like the ones I want to try to kill, and then I have another one that's like up and comers that I'm just kind of like keeping an
yeah,
eye on. That
yeah,
I'm
I
like,
gotta make that folder.
yeah, yeah. Nice, man. Well, hey, I want to be sensitive to your time. I know you're still at the range. I want to let you get going so you can get home. But I got one last question for you, brother. I always like to kind of
Yeah,
end
what's up?
end on this one. So you are the coach of a killer deer slaying basketball team, and you've got 3 tags you need to fill, and you have to pick 3 hunters to fill these tags, and your life depends on it. They can be anyone that you know, don't know. They can be dead. They can be alive. Whatever the case is, who are those 3 people that you're counting on to save your hide?
Oh boy, um, that's a tougher question than I thought it would be. Are we going like friends or just anybody?
No, anybody. They can be people you know, people you don't know, people who are famous, not famous, dead, alive, doesn't matter.
Um, you stumped me, man.
I know sometimes people just rattle them right off, and other times it's like people are like, I'm not prepared for this.
Yeah. So actually, all right. So, um, God rest his soul, because I was just talking about him today. That I used to follow that guy, Todd Pringle.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
can't. Yeah. So him,
Mm-hmm.
Barry Wenzel,
Okay.
and let's go Paul Schaefer, because the stories I've been hearing about him lately are incredible.
Paul Schaefer. I've not. That's the first
Yeah,
time anyone's mentioned that one on this question.
really. Yeah,
Yeah.
he's a bowyer.
Okay.
The Push guys just did a whole podcast with an interview that he did. He's since passed away,
Oh, okay.
but they did they read an interview with him, like, and Tim played actually Barry Wenzel doing the interview, and Tyler Carlson played Paul Schaefer, and they kind of read this interview back and forth, and it was super interesting.
Oh, that's cool. I'll have to check that out.
Yeah. So I mean, the dude's like a legend for sure.
Nice.
But some of the stories you hear about him, you're like, like you don't know if they're just made up because everyone talks so highly of this guy, but
Right.
they all come from somebody who knew him. You know what I mean? It's not like somebody
It's not
bragging
like,
about themselves. You know
right.
what I mean?
It's not, and it's not like they're trying to grow the legend for the growing the legend's sake. Right. It's them telling the stories about their buddy.
Yeah.
But, well, cool, man. I'll let you get going. I appreciate you coming on. Before I let you go, let people know where they can find out more about you, where they can follow you, and check out what you got going on this fall.
Okay. I'm like, all I have is Instagram. It's East Coast Stickbow, and there's it's East _, I believe it's called, the under thing.
Yep.
Coast _ Stickbow, and I'm the last living person on this earth without Facebook, so
yeah.
basically just Instagram.
Yeah, you're better off for it, man. I'll just be honest with you. You're better off for it. Well, brother, I appreciate you coming on and making time, dude. Let's make sure to stay in touch, and let's try to do another one of these this fall when you inevitably lay down another hammer.
Yeah, I'm winging it this year, man. We didn't really get into that, but
yeah, it's like, well, then
I kind of got one buck, right? I might go to Ohio. I might go to Missouri. I'm not kind of undecided right now, but
nice. Hell yeah! Like you should definitely do that. I got some intel on that we can share after when we hang up.
Okay.
Cool. Thanks, man. I appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, folks, that is a wrap for today's show. I'd like to thank all of you for listening. If you haven't yet, please head over to iTunes and leave us a 5-star rating, and be sure to subscribe to the podcast. And while you're at it, head over to YouTube and give us a sub there as well. I'd be super appreciative if you do those couple things for me. And before I shut this thing down, I need to give a big shout out to our partners who continue to help us make this podcast possible. Tethered, Spartan Forge, Exodus, and Skull Brew Coffee Company. And until next time, we'll see y'all.